My next two guests are an example of what can happen when people on opposite sides of the aisle join forces for a common cause. Joining me now, former Republican presidential candidate Carly Fiorina and former First Lady of Washington, D.C., Cora Masters Barry. Thank you both very much for coming to the Sunday show. Ms. Fiorina, let me start with you. Why did you, I think it was Ms. Barry who invited you to be a part of things this past week. Why accept the invitation?
Well, good morning, Jonathan, and good morning, Cora, to you as well. Look, when something is wrong or divisive or dangerous or sets us back, I think each of us has an obligation to speak up. So just as it's wrong to call the January 6th insurrection a patriotic act and blame it on Nancy Pelosi instead of Donald Trump, just as that's wrong and dangerous and divisive and sets us back, so it is equally wrong to have certain people who live in certain kinds of places with certain kinds of faces to make it almost impossible for those people to vote. That's wrong. It's un-American. It sets us back. Cora and I have been friends for a long time. We've learned over that time that we don't always agree, but we agree frequently, usually on the most important things. And a citizen's right to vote is among those most important things. And so I was privileged to stand with Cora and the other brave women who were there. And I will continue to stand up and speak out when I think something is wrong or divisive or dangerous or sets us back.
Ms. Barry, it's great to see you again. And I'm just wondering, I was blown away when I found out that Carly Fiorina was joining up with you. I guess I'm wondering, why haven't more Republicans joined in this effort? Why haven't we heard more Republican voices? Because I think, as Ms. Fiorina is pointing out, this is not a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. This should be an American issue, the access to the ballot.
Well, first, let me say again, thank you for having me on. And you're absolutely right. It is an American issue. And when I asked Carly, I didn't know what her answer would be, because you're right. There is a deficit of Republican voices. But it also may be because no one has taken the time to ask them. Because I know that there are good Republicans, humans, and care about people and care about what's fair in this country. And you have to give them a chance to speak up, or they can take their initiative. I don't know why more aren't doing it. Carly could probably answer that better than I can, but I can say that Carly is an addition to 25 other women-led organizations that joined us, because you're right, it's not a Black issue, it's an American issue. We have the American Jewish women with us, the League of Women Voters, and the organization, even though we started it with the leadership of Melanie Campbell and Black Women's Roundtable, right, and Dr. Johnetta Besh-Cole of National Council of Nuclear Women, we call it Black Women and Allies. So Carly and the League of Women Voters and the Jewish women are our allies in this battle against injustice.
And so, Ms. Fiorina, then, what do you say to your fellow Republicans who just don't want to move on this issue, who think that the bills that are, I think it's 18 states have already enacted 30 new laws, voter suppression laws, who think that that's a good thing?
Yes, I am so disappointed. Sometimes I'm driven to despair for my party. But I also think that it is in those times when people have to speak up. And as some of your guests on the previous segment says, look, it's not always easy to speak up because there's a lot of pressure not to. On the other hand, I think Republicans who are doing this are honestly caving to the pressure of their base. I think many of them have lost their moral compass. I think too many of them know exactly what they're doing. But nevertheless, they proceed to do it because they think it will help them get elected the next time. You know, just to put this in perspective, I'm not justifying it at all. But George Washington, our first president, said the trouble with politicians is they will come to care only about winning. And so I think what you're seeing is a lot of people who've come to care only about winning. That is a shame. Now, I will just say one more thing, if I may, on politics. The Democrats need to pare this bill down so that they give the Republicans not one excuse to vote against it. The last time the bill went forward, it had too many extraneous things in it. In my opinion, it gave Mitch McConnell an excuse. Don't give Republicans an excuse. Make it crystal clear that this is about every citizen's access to the ballot box. And I hope it will get the 60 votes necessary.
Ms. Barry, what do you make of that? What Ms. Fiorina advises Democrats to do to pare the bill down? Is that acceptable to you as someone who is passionate about this and even got arrested over it?
Well, I think that negotiations are always a part of the process. I don't know how much is in the bill that was anticipated that this would be an issue, but I can tell you this. They can pare it down only to a point that it does not delete or diminish the issue of federal pre-clearance and some of the issues around gerrymandering. Those things are non-negotiable. There may be some other things in the bill that can be negotiable because that's the nature of the legislative process. But we stand very strong and very clear. And we also stand very strong and clear about the filibuster. I know that Carly is not in favor of eliminating the filibuster, but I think that either you eliminate it or you reform it, but no process should be more important than the problem. And the problem of voting is a bread and butter fundamental freedom issue. And if the filibuster has to fall or be revised, then so be it. But if we don't vote, we don't have freedom and we don't have choice. And so that's the beginning of the end of the democracy of this country.
And Ms. Fiorina, in the 30 seconds we have left, your response to Ms. Barry and her support of reforming, getting rid of the filibuster to pass voting rights.
What I would just say is it feels good in the short term, but it can really hurt in the long term. And my guess is there are a lot of Democrats who really regret that Donald Trump got a third Supreme Court justice on the court with less than 60 votes. This should be a bipartisan issue, and I think it can be. So we need to press forward to ensure that it is.
This was an extraordinary conversation. I thank you both very, very much. Carly Fiorina, Cora Masters Barry, thank you very, very much for coming